Hey everybody, Dave here with part 2 of my GM overview for the Triumph of the Tusk Adventure Path. As usual, there's a few points I want to cover before we dive into the content of this video. First is that the purpose of both videos, both part 1 and part 2, is to help GMs decide if this is an adventure path that they're interested in running or if they're interested in getting more information about. As such, it's probably going to give more information than you would get from, a text review, a blog post, and that sort of thing. But it's not going to go into every single encounter. It's not going to go into every single plot point. We're trying to hit the high points and the things that are most material and relevant to the adventure path to keep these videos from being 10 hours long. Also, as usual, there will be spoilers in this video. Usually in the part 1 videos, I try to omit really heavy spoiler material and save it for the part 2 video. As you'll see as we go through this, there really wasn't a whole lot of spoiler material to omit, but there will certainly be spoilers as we go forward. So, as usual, if you're a player, hit the like button and then stop watching. If you haven't watched part 1, make sure you watch part 1 because this does build upon information that you will find in that video. I also want to reinforce that I have not played or GM'd this adventure path, so my perspective is that of just someone who's gone through the books. Certainly people who have actually played the adventure and have actually GM'd it will have a different perspective, and I just want to make sure that you're aware of the limitations of my perspective as I go through this. And a last piece of, compliance. Yes, I did receive copies of these books from Paizo. Now, usually at this point in the part 2 videos, I go into what I call story time with Dave, which is basically a walkthrough of the plot that focuses on material that was omitted from the part 1 video. But, like I mentioned a little while ago, this is a very straightforward adventure path. This does not have major surprises and mysteries and twists and turns and betrayals and that sort of thing. So this isn't a Season of Ghosts in that regard. This isn't Pray for Death, where there's a lot of God-related mysteries that I would have skipped over in the part 1 video. So there's not going to be a whole lot to story time with Dave in this video. But I do want to make sure I go through some of the backstory to the adventure path that I did omit from the first video. And that deals with Zagresh, the orc god of death and destruction. So after watching the first video, you may have been wondering, like, how does this tie into War of the Immortals? I know that this adventure path is supposed to be part of that larger meta plot for Pathfinder 2nd Edition. Well, Zagresh, the orc god of death and destruction, was killed by Grask Death. And when he died, what remained of his spirit drifted down to the mortal world and to a group of his worshippers who are part of the Death Tower Hold. Hold, in this sense, basically just means clan or tribe. But that group of orcs, the Death Tower, worshipped Zagresh, and so when he died, what remained of his divine spirit drifted to his worshippers. And the Hold's high priest was able to take the remains of Zagresh's divine soul and place it into sort of a patchwork mortal body called the Carcass Man. So Zagresh's spirit is now in the mortal flesh of this sort of fleshy construct golem-like creature called the Carcass Man, and wishes to return back to godhood, wishes to become a proper god again, and probably get his vengeance upon Grask Death. Now, when all of this occurred, Tar-Baphon, or the Whispering Tyrant, who I did talk about a little bit in the first video, as a powerful lich, he was able to sense this event. And so he sent agents to the Death Tower Hold and just basically said, hey, let's form an alliance. If you work with me to get my vengeance on the orcs of Belkzen, then I will perform a ritual that will reignite the divine spark within the Carcass Man and allow Zagresh to reascend back into godhood. Now, a plot twist, Tar-Baphon has no intention of actually doing that. He wants to manipulate these orcs and the remains of Zagresh and the Carcass Man to help him get his vengeance on the orcs of Belkzen. And once they've served their purpose, he plans to drain away what remains of Zagresh's power from the Carcass Man and use it for his own growth. So the cult of Zagresh agreed and said, "Sure, it will help you if you help return Zagresh to power." And so it's the what remains of the divine spark within the Carcass Man, within Zagresh, as the former orc god of death and destruction that was used to cause the resurrection flood and to cause the ancestor storms and this massive return of unlife within Belkzen and neighboring parts of neighboring territories, like we saw with the Shoanti in the previous video. So where we last left off in the previous video, the players had just taken the city of Wyvernsting, which is the capital of the Unbroken Horn. The Unbroken Horn Hold is the tribe of orcs who had aligned themselves with Tar-Baphon and with Zagresh, and was the main opposition to Ardax Whitehair's quest to kind of unify a large portion of the Belkzen orcs under his banner. So at this point, Ardax has figured out what's going on. He understands that this is probably the work of Zagresh and the Death Tower Hold. The next morning after the victory at Wyvernsting, the Ancestor Storm breaks free of Ardax's control, and it heads north into the mountains. And so Ardax goes to the players and say, hey, our work here is not done yet. I have one more task for you to do. I need you to venture north into the mountains, find out where the Ancestor Storm is going, find out, uncover the mystery of what's been causing all these problems and deal with it. And he believes that it is associated with the Death Tower Hold, but actually finding them is the first real challenge for the players. So this portion of the adventure plays out as a brief exploration, and it has 5 or 6 major encounters in the exploration that players can trigger if they venture into their exploration in these specific hexes, and there's about 10 minor encounters that can pop up while they're doing this exploration as well. If the players do not find the stronghold of the Death Tower orcs within 10 days, then in addition to the regular hazards of the exploration, they'll also have to deal with the Ancestor Storm and its presence and its complications. Now, eventually, they are going to, hopefully, find the Death Tower's stronghold, which is kind of carved into a mountain, and it's a 4-story tall. It's a dungeon. It's a 4-story tall dungeon, but it's built into a mountain, and each story is connected by a ladder. There's trapdoors that open with ladders for people to go up and down. The bottom 2 floors are occupied by the Death Tower orcs, and the upper floor is controlled by the agents of Tar-Baphon and the Carcass Man. And scattered across the floors of this compound are 4 loci. And so there are these 4 loci, I keep wanting to say locuses, forgive me, that are each associated with a different haunt. And as the players are exploring the stronghold, and they encounter these haunts, so they deal with the haunts and they then deal with each locus. They can sever those loci, and each of these loci are used to kind of funnel and transmit the Carcass Man's power to Tar-Baphon. So what's going on basically is the agents of Tar-Baphon have told the Orcs of Death Tower, hey, you guys have to stay on the lower level. Only we can be with the Carcass Man right now, because we're doing this very important ritual that's going to reignite the divine spark of Zagresh within him and allow him to return to godhood. And as part of that, we have to set up a locus in 4 different places as part of this ritual. The reality is that each of the loci has nothing to do with returning Zagresh to divinity. It has to do with funneling his soul to Tar-Baphon, the Whispering Tyrant, so he can grow in power by claiming what remains of Zagresh's divine spark. So once the players start their infiltration, invasion, however you want to approach this last chapter, there is the possibility that they can come to figure out that, wait a second, the Death Tower hold orcs, they're not feeling real great right now. They're suspicious of what's going on upstairs, and they're suspicious of these outsiders from Tar-Baphon and whatever they may be doing with the remains of their god. So there is not just an opportunity for your standard dungeon crawl encounters and battle, but there is a potential for them to actually form an alliance with the orcs of the Death Tower hold and say, hey, let's call a truce. We don't need to fight. Let us just go upstairs and kind of deal with what's happening up there. And ultimately, the players will get a choice over whether or not they want to spare the Carcass Man, aka Zagresh, or not. Now, each of the 4 loci also influences how powerful the Carcass Man is going to be in the final fight. So the adventure assumes that eventually the players are going to make it all the way up to the top level, where they will encounter the Carcass Man, and for every loci that they sever, for every locus they sever, it is going to impose greater and greater debilitating effects on the Carcass Man. So the Carcass Man might become enfeebled to and stupefied to, and so on and so forth. Those kind of effects based on how many of the loci are severed. Now, if all 4 of them are severed, then there's no direct conduit for Tar-Baphon to draw the divine spark of Zagresh and claim it for himself. But Tar-Baphon, being a powerful lich and a smart and creepy guy, had a backup plan. He sent a shadow of himself to the stronghold of the Death Tower orcs to try to draw a small fragment of divine power out of the Carcass Man and out of Zagresh. So, long story short, at this final climactic battle, the players, they can decide that they're gonna, sit back and just let Tar-Baphon win and draw the divine spark out of the Carcass Man. Or they can say, you know what, we're going to protect the Carcass Man from the shadow of Tar-Baphon. Or they could go up there and say, you know what, the only way to bring this to a proper end is to kill the Carcass Man. And if the Carcass Man is dead, then there's nothing left for the shadow of Tar-Baphon to draw out. That's the only ultimate victory. And so there are different options for how the players can go about this final encounter. The ultimate results of, like, if you let Tar-Baphon win and get the divine spark for himself and so forth, that's, beyond the scope of the adventure. That might be something that you can homebrew for fun afterwards to see, well, now that he has a spark of divine power, what does he do? I think the quote-unquote canon ending to this is going to be that the players destroy the Carcass Man and therefore prevent Tar-Baphon from getting any of that power, and also prevents Zagresh from being able to do any more harm by killing his current mortal form, the Carcass Man. So that's the end of the adventure path. Those are the small pieces for spoilers that I kind of navigated around in the part 1 video. But again, this is a super straightforward adventure path. So that's one of the things that I liked about this AP. Some of the other things that I noted as liking, I liked seeing Orc culture being described as something other than chaos and violence and death. There is definitely a sense of might makes right, and the powerful should lead and that sort of thing. But it feels more like a Worf from Star Trek than traditionally, like, growing up, especially playing like earlier editions of Dungeons and Dragons. I always viewed orcs as like these just chaotic agents of destruction. So being able to see some nuance and some layers to the orcs and their culture, I thought was great in this adventure path. I like the way that the war councils are used. So, like, for example, early in the second book, players will travel to Urgir and meet with a war council, and there's a number of different major things that they have to decide on. And it's not done just for the sake of exposition. The decisions made at the War Council have ramifications throughout the event. If anytime you side with this person over this person on any given topic, there's going to be a result, a consequence of those decisions. And so I like that they were intentional about that in the divine process. Like, throughout the adventure, you're going to find these little entries that say council impact. And the council impact pieces are going to tell you if you sided with this, or if Ardax is supporting that, then this is the result, and if not, it's another. For example, when you first visit Blisterwell, depending on if you decided to kind of promote diplomacy as an option, or if you wanted to put up a show of force and strength, well, that can then turn into bonuses to diplomacy and deception, or bonus to intimidation. Again, decisions made early in the adventure have consequences throughout that second book and the War Council, and I really like the way that was designed. I like that, again, the simplicity of the adventure, I think, will make this an easier adventure for new GMs. Now, there are other challenges, being that this starts at 3rd level instead of 1st level, and that I think the adventure path will work best with a party of all orcs, and if you have first-time players, they may not want that. But the narrative being simple makes it a little easier on GMs. There's some things I'll talk about pretty soon about this adventure path that makes it a little more difficult for GMs too. But having a structure in place where the players are loyal to Ardax, and Ardax is the mission giver throughout the entire campaign. It's, you are loyal to Ardax. Ardax says, I need you to go do this. I send you on this quest, on this mission. I need you to look into this or do this favor for me. If the players are loyal to Ardax, it makes it real easy on the GM to give them missions for them to perform and progress through the storyline. And so that removes a lot of the anxiety that I think new GMs may face with not knowing, well, players may go off the rails at any time. It's pretty easy to keep them on those rails if they're loyal to Ardax and he's the one telling them what to do at pretty much every step of the way. And I like how, I know this is a dirty word in some circles, but I do like how the victory points are used in some of the places of this adventure path. being a modern adventure path, there are victory points and infiltration points and escape points and caravan points and research points and influence points. The point subsystems are used frequently throughout the entire adventure. I know for a lot of GMs out there that's a sticking point, um, and I'm not going to argue against that. But I will say that I do like how the consequences for some of the victory points used in this adventure path I think are interesting. So, for example, the in book one you have the Exodus caravan. They're fleeing the resurrection flood. They're trying to get to the orcs of the Cleft Head Hold, and the number of escape points that you have tells you how much time you have to prepare. And then when you're on the Exodus and that caravan, you have caravan points that represent your supplies and the overall morale. Most victory point systems, there's a consequence if you don't have enough victory points. In this case, if you have too few caravan points, morale's low, people are going to leave your caravan, they're going to lose trust in your leadership. There's negative consequences. But I like that they actually positioned this in a way that if you have too many caravan points, there's also consequences. Because if you have an abundance of caravan points, well, what happens? Well, logically, bandits see your caravan and all of your wealth, and they say, "Hey, let's go get some of that," and that attracts danger. I think there could be an argument made that you never want to punish players for being too successful, but I don't view like something like that as a punishment. I just think it's a narrative consequence that makes sense. So I did like how in some places that, and like the infiltration of Wyvern Sting, I thought there were some fun things they did with the awareness points there as well. So those are my general likes for the adventure path. Again, very straightforward. I think it's going to be relatively easy to GM. Putting the spotlight on the orcs in a positive way. These are all great things. Now, as far as my other thoughts, which I try not to label these as just blunt dislikes. So these could be dislikes. They could be concerns that I have that maybe other people don't. And they could just be recommendations for, hey, maybe think of this in a different way. The first of those is, yes, this adventure path, it does start with a festival. And if you've been following modern adventure paths, it seems like, and I don't know, maybe this is just a tribute to Rise of the Runelords, the very first adventure path that started with a festival in Sandpoint. So many of the adventure paths these days all begin with some kind of a celebration or a festival, and that's largely used as just an excuse for why so many people, why PCs of different backgrounds might all be at this place at the same time. This has become the modern version of you meet in a tavern, right? So there are some people that find that distracting, find this redundant, it's an overused trope. I agree that it's being used a lot in modern adventure paths, but I also always advise people to look at it from the perspective of players. Us GMs, we probably read a lot of these adventure paths, so it stands out to us. If you're a player and you play one new adventure path every few years, it's probably not going to stand out and be an issue to them. But yes, this is yet another adventure path that starts with a big festival to explain why everybody's coming together. Another area of concern, I mentioned it before, there are a lot of point-based subsystems. And this is one of those areas where I said that narratively, I think this is simple and good for new GMs. The point-based subsystems can be a stumbling block for new GMs, so that might be something that they have to do a little more research into. My perspective as a GM has always been the best way to handle the point-based subsystems is to not tell your players that they're engaging in a point-based subsystem, because that can lead to a little bit of metagaming, and it takes them out of the immersion of the moment, and they start focusing more on what do I have to do to get points, as opposed to how would my character naturally respond in this given situation. But there are certainly some times where I have to nudge them a little bit to get them on track. For example, if there's a social encounter that's using the influence system, if you know, if I have a table with 5 players, 4 of those players don't have any skills related to diplomacy, so they feel like they don't have a role to play in the influence encounters unless I tell them, "Hey, look, there's other things you can do to help the team face and use your lore skills and your to pull out knowledge and conversation topics and that sort of things that can help with the influence." So, long story short, yes, lots of point-based subsystems in this adventure path. I know mileage can vary with how each GM approaches those. Just be aware of it. Another area of concern, this is a super linear adventure path. There's a little bit of wiggle room, like in the Hexploration of Book 3 and some other places. But at the end of the day, this is a very linear adventure path. So whereas it's simple to have Ardax be that mission giver that says, your next assignment is this, your next assignment is that, some players are going to feel like they don't have a whole lot of agency. My table would have no problem with this. My table would probably, frankly, like just being agents of someone they're loyal to. Other tables who want more agency might find this to be very linear. So you know your table better than I do. Just keep that in mind. Oh boy. So now we're going to get into kind of the dirt. So there are some instances of confusing text and a map that doesn't really work well for me. And I'm going to try not to get into nitpicky stuff, a spelling mistake here or there, but there are some things that are that will be confusing to GMs trying to run this if we don't look at them in advance. But the first of these is going to be Ardax, or the amazing teleporting Ardax. So the amazing teleporting Ardax, you have Ardax the Whitehair, and in book 1, there is conflicting text that seems to imply that he's with the players during their caravan exodus, and he's with the players at Cleft Head Hold, and there's other texts that make it sound like he's not there. So where is Ardax? I'm just going to make it simple. The beginning of book 2 says Ardax summons the players to Urgir to meet with the War Council. Meet with him and then the War Council. So I take that to mean that Ardax is not with them at Cleft Head Hold, that he is, in fact, at Urgir during that portion, but just be aware that there is text that kind of puts Ardax in different places, or can be read and inferred that he's in different places. Then there's Splitskull Keep. Okay, so Splitskull Keep is the fortress that is controlled by the Cleft Head Orcs at the end of book 1. And I'm just going to bring up some maps. Okay, so I'm going to start with this map of the lower level of Splitskull. And there is this staircase behind a secret door. I freely admit that I may have missed something I didn't read, but from what my reading of this is, I didn't see a description of this secret door. Normally they'll say there's a portion of the wall behind a painting, and there's a small switch next to the bookcase that whatever. I didn't see a description of the secret door, and I didn't see any kind of perception DC to notice a secret door. This is an encounter for 5th level players, so using DC by level, I think that would mean it's probably a DC 20 perception check to find the secret door that would lead into this spiral staircase. There is some information in room G5 that says that there was a secret door that was found and smashed, and that led into a treasure room, which is G5. And I don't think that's talking about the secret door up by the stairwell. I think that's talking about this door to the left. Again, I could be wrong. If I'm misinterpreting this, please just let me know in the comments, and I apologize. But so we have this staircase, and it's logical to assume that this staircase is going up, because if we go to the map for the upper level of Splitskull Keep, we see that there is another spiral staircase there. Okay, so that makes sense. But what's confusing is if we then go to the map of the catacombs beneath Splitskull, in the description for Area I-1, it says, a circular stone stairway stands in an alcove to the north. There's no spiral stone staircase on the map, so okay, no problem. I'll draw that in. But now there's also no information of where that staircase connects. I'm going to assume, and we all know how dangerous it is to assume anything, but I'm going to assume that it connects to this spiral staircase on the lower floor behind the secret door between G1 and G5. So I guess this is one of those areas where if you're not careful, you could describe this staircase as just being, it just goes up. But in reality, it goes up and it goes down. Or maybe I'm completely misreading this, and it goes up, and there's a secret door that you open for it to go further down. I don't know, because I didn't see text really describing this. But at any rate, in Area I-1, it does say that there is supposed to be a spiral stone staircase in the northern alcove of the room. Now, to make things even more confusing for me, when I get down in the text below the flavor text for I-1, it says, if the PCs seek to enter Splitskull Keep beneath the catacombs through the sinkhole X inside front cover. Okay, so there's a sinkhole that they can use to get into the keep. Your fun little secret entrance. So let's go to the inside front cover. So this is what we have for the inside front cover. And Splitskull Keep or Splitskull Fortress is over here. And the X, I don't know. There's these two crossed swords. Is that supposed to be the X on the map on the inside front cover? That seems a really far distance from Splitskull Fortress to be the sinkhole. Well, fortunately, it didn't take me too long and too much confusion to figure this out. When the entry for I-5 or I-1 is talking about the X on the inside front cover, it actually means the inside of the back cover. Because if we go to the inside of the back cover, we get this map, and it shows us the X where the sinkhole is that can be used to access into the catacombs. Okay, so at least there's some resolution there. But just in general, that map for Splitskull Keep is just kind of a mess to me. Moving on, in book 2, you encounter a character named Yundarga, who is the relatively new leader of the Haskadar Orcs in Blisterwell. And that's all fine and cool. But then in the next chapter, the Haskadar Orcs contact you and ask you to come meet with them and representatives of the Gut Spear Orcs. It says, not long after this initial discussion, the PCs receive an invitation from Tulluk Clovenface and Yusak Rookkoller to attend a meeting between the Haskadar and Gut Spear holds. On first view, this is probably not a big problem, but if you go back to our friend Yundarga, it says a little bit of her background. A gruff warrior, she became leader of the Haskadar Hold a little more than a year ago after challenging Tulluk Clovenface. So Tulluk Clovenface was the earlier original chief in charge of the Haskadar Orcs of Blisterwell. Cool. It goes on to say, though Yundarga spared the elder chief's life, Tulluk died soon after. So a couple problems here. First, obviously, if Tulluk died here, then he shouldn't be present in the following chapter to meet with the Gut Spear Orcs. So there's a couple of different ways you can approach this. The first might be that after Yundarga defeated Tulluk Clovenface and spared his life, he didn't die shortly thereafter. In fact, I don't really like that. It says he died shortly thereafter, but from his wounds, from like what was the actual cause of his death, I don't know. It just seems bizarre that it just kind of ends that way. And that he is still an orc of some renown within Haskadar, and he is, in fact, the person who meets with the players in that later chapter. The other way is just to assume that what this should be is that Yundarga is the one. She's the one that has the relationship with the players, and she's the one who's been working with Isak Rockcaller, and it kind of just makes narrative sense that she would be the one to also reach out to them and say, hey, can you come chat with us? The Gut Spear Orcs, they're having a problem with the Shoanti, blah, 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 blah. So this could just be an area where at one time Tulluk Clovenface was the leader of the Haskadar Orcs, and then they did a rewrite and inserted Yundarga and just didn't clean up all of the text. And as I've said before, I try not to get into like spelling mistakes and all that, but something that slips through the cracks is this big makes me just nervous of what, if this is the obvious thing that slipped through the cracks, I don't know what are the smaller things that slip through the cracks as well, and it just makes me a little nervous. So especially if you have had an opportunity, I know it's this book has only been out for like 3 months now, so I don't know if anybody's had a chance to even run this AP, but if you have, let us know if you encountered anything else funky when you were running it. Another thing about Yundarga is, just like we had the amazing teleporting Ardax, we also have a case of the amazing teleporting Yundarga. I think it's just a simple mistake. When the players are working with the Star Screamers of Rule, there is a mention of Yundarga being present for that. I think that was just they mixed up the names of the leaders of the Storm Screamers, and it should have been Regnet the Green instead of Yundarga. But she is not with the Storm Screamers. You shouldn't be encountering her until you get to Blisterwell. Let's see what else. Okay, so another minor thing, but could trip you up in book 3. So when you're doing the infiltration of Wyvernsting, there are the awareness points, and again, I mentioned before, I like how they're using the awareness points in this section. I actually like most of what I've read of the infiltration and battle at Wyvernsting. I think it's pretty cool. But there is a table, and the table shows the consequences of what happens at the different thresholds of awareness points. And let me pull it up real fast. Okay, so the awareness point effects table makes reference at 25. If the players accumulate 25 awareness points, they are revealed as Ardax's agents, triggering Event 3 Blown Cover on page 28. And this is repeated immediately above the table where it also says Event 3 Blown Cover, page 28. The problem with that is that they got the page number right, but is not Event 3, it's Event 5. So Blown Cover, the table says Event 3 is actually Event 5, and Event 3, for whatever it's worth, is Wrong Neighborhood. But just be aware that there was that mistake within the awareness points effect table. Don't let that trip you up. Okay, so those are the confusing pieces of text and weird map stuff that I have to talk about. Other ideas, thoughts, and so forth. The mini adventures. I think the mini adventures are nice, but I have a couple of concerns with them. The first being that they would never get played at my table, and the reason is I barely have enough time to get through the core adventure with my players. I don't see any scenario where I'm adding even more content. Like we started Age of Ashes now getting close to 6 years ago, and yeah, we had COVID that really messed everything up. So 6 years or getting close to 6 years isn't the problem. We're right here at the cusp of entering the final book right now. But when you have that much time that's being dedicated, and yeah, that's a 6-book AP as opposed to a 3-book AP, I just don't see me having the time to add that in. The exception to that might be if we have a week where like only 4 of our players can make it, and instead of our usual 5, and we still want to get together and we don't want that person to feel left out, maybe if the choices are between canceling or keeping it and doing something a little different, might do these as a one shot. I can see those fitting in. But in general, it just looks like it sounds awesome, but I got the main story to try to get resolved before adding other things. Other thought about it is that they're isolated to just book 2. I think it might be different if they had these little mini adventures, or I think they call them jobs. I say mini adventures. I think the official text is job. If they had these jobs in the appendixes of part 1 and part 3 as well, as opposed to they only occur during the events of book 2, or within the level range of book 2. You could probably do them earlier or later, but they are in that same level range as book 2. So part of me thought, well, are there other things that could have been better used for that space? Surprisingly, in the backs of books 1, 2, and 3, there's no major write-ups for Ardax the Whitehair. Usually, really significant NPCs have like 2 pages, maybe even 3 or 4, that are dedicated to like biographies of who that character is. And Ardax, despite his significance in the entire AP, isn't afforded that. So I thought, well, maybe instead of these jobs or mini adventures, it would have been nice to have some more information about Ardax. Now, there is a write-up at the end of book 1 about the Orcs of Belskin, and it talks a lot about Ardax and his political views and his agenda and so forth and that. But again, there's nothing like really dedicated to Ardax, so I thought maybe that would have been a better use of page space for my group, who probably wouldn't be running these mini adventures or jobs anyway. Also, some thoughts about party composition. Okay, so this is designed so that in the beginning of book 1, there's this big festival, and Ardax is trying to mend fences and build bridges and make alliances with not just the Orcs of Belskin, but surrounding areas as well. So for the Torrentmoot, he's inviting in representatives from Varizia and the Mammoth Lords in the north, and just wherever your PCs are going to be from, they're being invited in. And so on the plus side, this opens the door for pretty much any combination of character, ancestry, and background, and backstory, and class and whatnot. So if your players want to play a specific thing, they don't feel limited. My opinion, this AP is going to work best if you do put limitations on it. Or not put limitations, but if you have a group of players who are genuinely excited about the thought of let's all play orcs, or let's all play or orcs / half orcs, who are native to Belkzen, then that is going to be the best way to run this AP. So the adventure does try to make things as convenient as possible for humans and elves and leshies and everybody else being involved. In book 2, they're all giving diplomats badges from Ardax that they can show to people in Belkzen and say, hey, look, this proves that I'm an agent of Ardax, if you're loyal to Ardax, you get listen to me, and I've got the rights to be here and so forth. I don't know. That just seems kind of weird to me. Also, there is a part of me that thinks of orcs as being really proud, really, really proud people. Does it diminish that if they have to rely on outsiders to save them? If you end up with a party that's entirely human, does this turn into the human saviors who are coming into these the tribal orc lands to save them? I don't know. Maybe this rubs a little bit of modern colonialism thoughts and whatnot, but I just feel like it diminishes the orcs if they're saved by outsiders, as opposed to having strong heroes of their own who can stand up and fight against the undead invasion. So just food for thought. The adventure absolutely accommodates everybody. My personal take, this would work great for players who are all excited about being orcs or orc adjacent like a half-orc. Also, an opportunity. The Torrentmoot is a gathering of orcs from all different clans and whatnot. So there's an opportunity for you to use that as a way to plant seeds that will be paid off in later chapters of the first book or later books altogether. Maybe a representative from the Death Tower Hold is there. Maybe they're open about it. Maybe they're a spy. Maybe Khazard, who is the leader of the Clefthead Orcs, who you, later in Book 1 at Splitskull Keep, you arrive there to find his gates barred, and he's kicked out everybody who's not loyal to him, and he's isolated inside the keep. Maybe he was at the Torrentmoot. Maybe you get a chance to meet him, and he mysteriously leaves right before the flood. The flood is the big event. That's why we're all here. But why did that one orc chief of Clefthead Hold just take off right before the big event? I just think that there's ways that you can use that to plant seeds later on and have them pay off in narratively interesting ways. So you might consider doing that. All right, so we're on the home stretch here. Thanks for bearing with me. I know these are always long videos. Questions that I received in the comments. The same anytime we have one of these 3 book adventure paths. Well, what do you run before this? What do you run after this? This is an unusual case because it is a 3-book AP that starts on level 3, and everybody is supposed to be significant enough in Orc society or significant enough from outside societies to be invited in. So they start on 3rd level. What do they do to get to 3rd level? There's not really real good fits that I'm aware of. I don't play Pathfinder Society, so there might be something in Pathfinder Society that'd be a good fit. If there is, let us know in the comments. But like Rusthinge goes to 4th level, and it might be kind of weird if you have an all-orc party connecting Rusthinge to Triumph of the Tusk might be a little weird. Troubles in Atari runs to 5th level, but the way that's divided into chapters and whatnot, you might be able to finish it earlier, but it's still, I don't think it fits super great. You could homebrew something to get you to 3rd level. My take, I think if I was to run Triumph of the Tusk, I would start at third level. I would end it at the conclusion at 12th level, and I wouldn't even think about running something before or after. Like this, I would treat this as a self-contained story. That said, I really hope they come back and do a sequel to this, because the way it ends with Tar-Baphon still looming out there and too big of a threat for 11th, 12th level characters, I really hope they revisit this and make a level 12 to 20 AP that takes the fight to Tar-Baphon. That's not something that's ever been announced or even mentioned, but that's the only scenario in which I personally would run anything after this AP. There are a couple of APs that start at 11th level. Fist of the Ruby Phoenix might narratively be the best fit, although again it starts at 11th level instead of 12th level. Stolen Fate could work, but again, if you have this, it doesn't really connect well to this story or to a party full of orcs. And another option is to run Curtain Call after Triumph of the Tusk, but the first problem with that again is it starts at level 11, and Triumph of the Tusk ends at level 12, so there's that one level overgap, and narratively there's some complications as well in the way that both of those APs connect to War of the Immortals. Without getting into too much spoilers, Curtain Call takes place canonically before the God's Reign, and Triumph of the Tusk canonically takes place after the God's Reign. So to move those, you'd have to do, I don't think it'd be impossible, but you could certainly play with the time of death for Zagresh and so forth and make things work, but you'd have to make sure that in the timeline of your adventure path in your world, that continuity is shifted a little bit. Another question I got was about the mini adventures. Is there a recommendation of when to run them? I don't really recall any like major advice on when to run them. Like, after the players complete this milestone is a great time to jump over to the mini adventure party and run it. Instead, it has a lot of guidance on how to manage the mini adventures. If you don't want it to be a separate party, maybe you want to incorporate those jobs, those events into the main storyline. And so they become side quests, they become things that the players might stumble upon while they're traveling from point A to point B, and so forth. There's more guidance given in respect to that kind of modification. Then certainly, there's certainly not a hard rule of, at this time, run this mini adventure. In the mini adventures, the jobs are not super specific to major events in the storyline, and you can probably be flexible with when you run those. And the last question that I have here is, to what degree does the adventure path go into War of the Immortals and the new Orc Pantheon? It really doesn't. Zagresh is obviously the key figure here, and there's just backstory text about how he was the orc god of death and destruction, and he was slain by Old Death, I believe. But it doesn't go into deep knowledge of those events. That's all just kind of backstory and framing for why Zagresh is in the body of the carcass man. It certainly does not intersect with the War of the Immortals to the degree that Pray for Death did, or the degree that Curtain Call did. All you really need to know about that is the fate of Zagresh. But it probably would be good to research the Orc Pantheon and know it. There are mentions in Book 1 of how this is a troubling time for the orcs because so many of their gods are no longer there. Their priests are no longer having their prayers answered. They're no longer getting divine power. And how does the change in their pantheon impact their culture and having to shift from worshiping one god to another? And does the new god accept these clerics from previously other faiths or not? It doesn't go into specifics of this specific orc god and this specific orc god. Here's the relationship with their followers and so forth. So it would probably benefit you as a GM to research that on your own and weave that sort of stuff in however makes sense for you and your campaign. All right, so that is my second video on Triumph of the Tusk. Again, I like Triumph of the Tusk. I think it's very straightforward, it's very linear, lots of point subsystems, which may be a stumbling block, but narratively it should be good for even newer GMs. I definitely think it works best as an all-orc party. If you have played this or GM'd this, let us know in the comments. What was your experience? What were your takeaways? If you have any follow-up questions, let us know that as well. And as always, I want to take a quick moment to say thank you to everybody out there who supports me and this channel, whether that's by clicking the like button, subscribing to the channel, subscribing to the Patreon, or buying a super thanks. I greatly appreciate everything you folks do to support me. And with that, thanks for watching. Take care and happy gaming.